I'm Chloe. At 33, I'm the founder of a company valued at $25 million, and I did it all without a college degree. For a long time, I was the silent benefactor for my family, funneling money to them while they looked down on my life choices. That all came crashing down last month during my father's birthday dinner, when he called me classless, uneducated trash, and threw me out of his home. He had no idea just how successful I'd become. The look on his face 3 weeks later made every single tear I'd ever shed completely worth it. Before I get into the story of how I went from my family's secret ATM to being called trash by my own dad, do me a favor and drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt like the people who should have had your back the most were the ones who underestimated you, hit that like button and subscribe. I grew up in a comfortable middle-class suburb of Denver, Colorado, where the path to a good life was laid out like a railroad track, straight, narrow, and traditional. My father, Robert, was a financial analyst who had spent his entire career at the same downtown firm. He held an almost religious belief that a 4-year university degree was the only ticket to a respectable life. My mother, Helen, worked as a school librarian and in her quiet way, echoed every one of his convictions. From a young age, I knew I was wired differently than my siblings, Leo and Megan. They both fell in line, embracing the conventional path without a second thought. Even as a 10-year-old, I was already showing an entrepreneurial streak that completely baffled my parents. While other kids were playing video games after school, I was running a sophisticated pet accessories business, selling custom-made collars and leashes with loyalty cards for repeat customers. By the time I was 14, I was the neighborhood's go-to tech support, charging $30 an hour to fix computer problems that the local electronics store quoted at over $100. To my parents, these were just cute little phases. Chloe needs to spend more time on her homework and less time on these little side projects, my father would declare at the dinner table. These games aren't going to put food on the table when she's an adult. High school felt like a constant battle. I kept my grades up, but my real education was happening outside the classroom, where I devoured business memoirs and followed startup founders on social media. While my siblings were padding their resumes with extracurriculars for their college applications, I was busy launching an online store flipping vintage clothing I sourced from thrift stores, clearing nearly $3,000 by the time I graduated. But the pressure was immense, so I caved and enrolled in a local community college to keep the peace. It took exactly 1 semester for me to realize I had made a huge mistake. The rigid, structured environment felt suffocating, and the business classes I was so excited about were a joke. I was being taught theories from decades-old textbooks by professors who had never once risked their own money to start a real company. When I finally worked up the courage to tell my parents I was dropping out to focus on my business ideas, the fallout was catastrophic. The argument raged for days. "You are flushing your future down the toilet," my father yelled, his face turning a blotchy red I'd never seen before. No daughter of mine is going to be a college dropout, destined to work dead-end jobs for the rest of her life. But my mind was made up. At 19, I moved out with just $1,800 from my various ventures. Those first few months on my own were absolutely brutal. I found a tiny, damp basement apartment in a part of town you learn not to walk around in after sunset. My diet consisted almost exclusively of instant noodles and canned soup from the discount grocery store. I poured every waking moment, often 18 hours a day, into building my first real e-commerce concept. My first 3 attempts were spectacular failures. I lost most of my savings on a drop-shipping business when the supplier in China sent a batch of horribly defective products. My next idea, a social media consulting service for small businesses, imploded because I priced my services too low and completely burned myself out trying to juggle too many clients at once. My final early failure was an Etsy shop for artisanal soaps. I just couldn't figure out how to scale production beyond what I could make in my own kitchen. But each failure was a masterclass in business. I learned about supply chain logistics the hard way, figured out how to write ironclad client contracts through painful experience, and understood the realities of production scaling by crashing headfirst into its limits. The real turning point came when I met Eleanor at a Women in Business networking event. She was 20 years older than me, a serial entrepreneur with several successful companies under her belt. She saw a spark in me that my own family refused to acknowledge. Eleanor became the mentor I was so desperate for, sharing practical, real-world business knowledge without ever once judging me for my lack of a degree. "A classroom isn't the only place to get smart, kid," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "Some of the smartest, most successful people I know learned by getting their hands dirty, not by sitting in a lecture hall." With her guidance, I refined my vision. At 22, I launched my new venture, Origin Goods, an e-commerce platform dedicated to connecting small, independent American artisans with customers who were hungry for locally made, high-quality products. My timing couldn't have been better. There was a growing movement to support small businesses and domestic craftsmanship. Those early days of Origin Goods demanded every ounce of my energy. I turned half of my cramped apartment into a makeshift office, sleeping on a futon that I had to fold up every morning. My desk, computer, and stacks of shipping boxes took up most of my living space. My days started at 5 in the morning and didn't end until well after midnight. I did everything myself, from coding the website to answering customer service calls. The breakthrough happened about 8 months in. A prominent lifestyle blogger featured one of our partner artisans, a woodworker from Oregon. The response was instantaneous. Orders came flooding in, nearly crashing our very basic website. I didn't sleep for 3 days straight, manually processing orders and working with a freelance developer to upgrade our server capacity. That single blog feature generated over $15,000 in revenue, more money than I had ever seen in my life. I was ecstatic. I called my parents, buzzing with excitement, to share the news. My father's response was a splash of cold water. "Well, that's good, honey," he said, his voice laced with skepticism. "But don't count your chickens before they hatch. These internet fads tend to fizzle out." His words were a gut punch, but they also lit a fire under me. I was going to prove him wrong, not with arguments, but with success so undeniable that he couldn't ignore it. The next 5 years were a whirlwind of relentless work and explosive growth. My platform, Origin Goods, evolved far beyond its initial concept. We had started with just 27 artisans from a handful of states. By the end of year 3, we were representing over 400 makers and craftspeople across all 50 states, giving them a national marketplace for their American-made goods. Every new stage of growth presented its own set of challenges. When our servers crashed during a massive Black Friday promotion, I was awake for 48 hours, coordinating with our tech team to get the site back online while personally responding to customer emails to preserve the goodwill we had built. When a larger, venture-backed competitor tried to poach our top-selling artisans with promises of lower commission fees, I got on a plane and met with each one of them in person, strengthening our relationships and rolling out an improved partnership program. The hardest time came during our second year, when a cash flow crisis nearly sank the entire company. We were growing faster than our capital could support, with inventory demands far outpacing our incoming revenue. I didn't take a salary for 4.5 months, moved into an even smaller apartment to slash my personal expenses, and spent weeks negotiating extended payment terms with our suppliers. Those lean months taught me a level of financial discipline that would prove invaluable as the company scaled. We started hitting major milestones one after another. Our first real office was a renovated loft space downtown, where I hired our first 3 employees to manage customer support and artisan relations. We crossed the $1 million mark in annual revenue midway through year 3, a moment I celebrated by myself with a single glass of cheap champagne in the office after everyone else had gone home. Through it all, I intentionally downplayed my success to my family. They knew I ran a website business and that it was doing all right, but I never shared the real numbers. Their early discouragement had built a wall between us, and I was afraid to test its strength. A part of me kept hoping they would start asking real questions, showing some genuine curiosity about my work, but that day never came. Despite their lukewarm attitude, I never hesitated to help them financially. When my mother was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer in my company's 4th year, I anonymously covered the $80,000 in medical bills that their insurance wouldn't touch. My father later told me about a surprise old insurance policy they discovered that had saved them from financial ruin, never once suspecting I was the source. My brother, Leo, ran into trouble trying to buy his first condo. He was $45,000 short on the down payment. I structured a loan through a separate legal entity, making it look like it came from a distant family trust. He took the money without hesitation, but still made snarky comments about me getting a real job with a 401k whenever my career came up. My sister Megan had always dreamed of a fairy tale wedding. When her fiancé Daniel was unexpectedly laid off 6 months before the big day, I stepped in and covered the $55,000 shortfall for the venue and catering. Megan knew the money was from me, but she minimized it at family gatherings, calling it a gift from my little online shop that was having a lucky streak. The chasm between my reality and my family's perception of me was becoming a source of constant, gnawing pain. By day, I was a CEO, leading strategy meetings for a multi-million-dollar enterprise, making decisions that impacted hundreds of small businesses, and negotiating deals with national retail chains. By night, I was fielding texts from my family, who still treated me like the college dropout who stumbled into some internet luck. Our headquarters had expanded to an entire floor of a downtown office building with 38 full-time employees and a competitive internship program. After a profile in a major business magazine brought a wave of investor attention, our company was officially valued at $25 million. I retained majority ownership, turning down multiple acquisition offers that would have made me incredibly wealthy, but would have cost me control of the company I had poured my life into. As my father's 60th birthday approached, I made a decision. It was time to be fully honest about what I had built, not to brag, but to finally shatter their misconceptions and maybe, just maybe, earn the respect I had craved for over a decade. I purchased a lavish gift, a fully funded retirement investment portfolio, and planned to present it to him at his birthday dinner, along with the full story of my success. The night before, I practiced what I was going to say. I wasn't that insecure 19-year-old begging for approval anymore. I was a successful entrepreneur who had created opportunities for hundreds of American families. Surely that had to count for something. Surely that would finally make my father see me differently. I couldn't have been more wrong. The evening of my father's 60th birthday started with a familiar sense of strained politeness. Their house was a time capsule, the same furniture and family photos from my childhood lining the shelves. The only significant new object was a massive flat-screen TV my brother had bought them for Christmas, a prominent symbol of his conventional success. My mother greeted me with her usual hug, a quick stiff embrace with a pat on the back. "You look well, Chloe. Is that a new haircut?" It was the same style I'd had for the last 3 years. Leo and his wife Heather arrived next, both impeccably dressed in what I called successful adult cosplay, business casual that screamed upper middle class. Megan and her husband Daniel followed, with Megan immediately launching into a story about her recent promotion at the accounting firm, where she was proudly following in our father's footsteps. "The partners are already saying I'm on the fast track for a junior partnership," she announced to the room. I'd be the youngest in the firm's history. In all the pre-dinner chatter, my life was a complete blind spot. Not a single person asked me about my work. When Daniel made a passing comment about seeing a news segment on the growth of e-commerce, Leo quickly changed the subject to his son's soccer team. Dinner was my mother's classic pot roast, served on the good china that only came out for special occasions. My father sat at the head of the table soaking in the praise. "60 looks good on you, Dad," Leo said, raising his wine glass. "Here's to many more." I waited until dessert was served. I had sat patiently through endless talk of neighborhood gossip, Leo's kids' school achievements, and Megan's upcoming trip to Italy. My life, my business, my world, it was as if they didn't exist. Dad, Mom, everyone I started, my heart pounding despite my calm exterior. I have some news I'd like to share about my company. My father gave a distracted nod, his attention already on the birthday cake. Origin Goods was recently valued at $25 million, I said, my voice clear and steady. We've had several acquisition offers, and I was featured in both Forbes and Entrepreneur magazine last month. A heavy silence fell over the table. My mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Megan shot a quick, unreadable look at Daniel. Leo just stared at me, his mouth slightly open. My father was the first to break the silence, his tone dripping with condescension. And what does that even mean, Chloe? These internet companies throw around these imaginary numbers. It's all funny money. I kept my cool, explaining as simply as I could how business valuations are calculated, our revenue streams, our profit margins, our growth projections. I mentioned our office, our 38 employees, and our network of over 400 American artisans. Before I could finish, Leo cut me off. So, you got lucky with your little website. That's great, really. But some of us have been building actual careers with actual qualifications, he said, emphasizing the word qualifications as he glanced at his wife, who nodded in fervent agreement. It's not luck, I replied, my voice firm. It's 7 years of 18-hour days, of solving incredibly complex problems and building something from nothing. We've helped save dozens of small American businesses from going under. My mother finally spoke, her voice timid. That does sound nice, dear. I still just wish you'd finished your degree. A good education is so important no matter what. My patience was wearing thin, but I pushed forward. Actually, I brought you something, Dad. I handed him a polished leather portfolio containing the documents for the retirement account I had set up for them. I wanted to make sure you and Mom have a completely worry-free retirement. My father opened the portfolio. As he read, his expression went from confusion to a dark, simmering anger. "What is this?" he said, his voice low. "Some kind of handout? We don't need your charity." He dropped the papers on the table as if they were contaminated. "That wasn't the intention at all," I tried to explain. "I just wanted to help. The same way I helped with Mom's medical bills and Leo's condo and Megan's wedding." 3 heads snapped in my direction at once. My secret generosity was suddenly out in the open. "You?" my father stammered, his face turning beet red. "That was all you!" Megan looked horrified. Leo's face twisted into an ugly sneer. My mother just looked lost. "You've been going behind our backs, paying for things?" My father's voice escalated with every word. "Playing the big shot with your internet money? I was just trying to help the family," I said, my voice shrinking. "I never wanted any credit." "Help?" Leo interjected. "You mean make us feel like your charity cases? Some of us have honest jobs with real degrees. We aren't getting rich off some online fad." "It's not a fad," I insisted, feeling the room spin. "I built a real business that employs people and supports American manufacturing." My father slammed his hands on the table and stood up. "You drop out of college against our express wishes, vanish into your own little world, and now you waltzed in here, throwing money around like you know better than all of us." "That's not what I'm doing," I protested, my voice trembling. "You think your money makes you something special?" he roared, his voice now a full-blown yell. "You're still the same uneducated girl who got lucky. Your money doesn't change that you're classless." The word hung in the air, sharp and brutal. My mother let out a small gasp but said nothing to defend me. Leo looked down at his plate, a smirk playing on his lips. Megan looked torn between shame and agreement. "Robert," my mother whispered. "Far too late. No," my father raged on, completely consumed by his anger. "I did things the right way. I got an education, I built a respectable career, I raised a family, and I will not be lectured in my own home by my dropout daughter." I slowly rose from my chair, grabbing my purse. I should go. Yes, you should, my father spat. Get out of my house, you lowlife. Your money doesn't buy you a place in this family. We have standards. Each word was a physical blow. I looked from face to face around that table, searching for a single ally, a flicker of support. I found none. Happy birthday, Dad, I said quietly, and walked out the front door with as much dignity as I could find. No one came after me. No one called my name. I climbed into my car, my hands shaking so violently I could barely turn the key. As I pulled away from the house I grew up in, I knew something had been irrevocably shattered. The drive back to my hotel was a tear-streaked blur of headlights and taillights. I had to pull over on the shoulder twice, completely overcome with a grief so profound I couldn't see the road. The irony was suffocating. I was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and I was spending the night in a generic hotel in my own hometown because I'd been kicked out of my family's house. In the sterile silence of the hotel room, I replayed the entire dinner, dissecting every word, every look, every pregnant pause. Was I too arrogant? Had I been naive to think my success could ever bridge the gap between us? The financial support I had so freely given now felt like a pathetic attempt to purchase an approval that was never for sale. I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet, documenting every dollar I had ever given them. The list was staggering. $80,000 for my mother's cancer treatments, paid directly to the hospital. $120,000 for my brother's condo, covering not just the down payment, but a series of unexpected renovations he'd asked for months later. $55,000 for my sister's wedding, including the venue, the caterer, and a honeymoon trip I had funded without her knowledge. Then there were the countless smaller things. My father's car repair, a $2,500 bill. My mother's kitchen remodel, $35,000. Christmas, birthdays, emergencies, all quietly covered through accounts I'd set up to be untraceable. The total was well over $300,000, not even including the retirement fund my father had just thrown back in my face. It was money I never expected to see again, given out of love for a family that had just branded me as trash. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Megan. Dad's still fuming, but he'll cool down. You know how he is when he feels his authority is challenged. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the vile things he'd said, just an implicit expectation that I would absorb the verbal abuse and slot myself back into the family hierarchy as if nothing happened. I didn't reply. The next morning, I found a therapist in my home city who offered virtual sessions and booked an emergency appointment for that afternoon. Wounds from family cut the deepest, doctor. Evans observed gently after I recounted the story, especially when they attacked the very identity you've worked so hard to build. Over the next few days, Dr. Evans helped me unpack the toxic dynamics. My success didn't just puzzle my family, it threatened the very foundation of their worldview. My financial aid, instead of inspiring gratitude, had bred resentment by upsetting a power balance they weren't ready to confront. Your father built his identity on being the provider and the authority, she explained. Your success, achieved on your own terms, challenges both of those roles. I started journaling, documenting not just the dinner, but a lifetime of subtle discouragements. The way my entrepreneurial projects were dismissed as hobbies, the way academic achievements were loudly celebrated while my business wins were met with silence or skepticism. It was a painful but clarifying process, revealing how deeply I had internalized their narrative. Despite all my outward success, a part of me still felt like the family screw-up who had something to prove. A week after the birthday dinner, my sister called. I let it go to voicemail. "Chloe, please call me back," her message said, her voice strained. "Dad feels bad, we all do. But you have to see it from our side. You coming in there and basically flashing your money around. It was a little insensitive to the rest of us." I deleted the message. The audacity was breathtaking. I was now the villain for stating facts about my own life after years of deliberately hiding my success to protect their feelings. Leo texted next, "Family is family. Let's just move past this." Again, no apology, just a command to fall back in line. 2 weeks after that dinner, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and profoundly liberating. I was done. I would no longer sacrifice my self-respect for a seat at a table where I was not valued. The beach house I had bought in Charleston, South Carolina the year before as an investment property, that would be my new home. Before I left, I wrote a single letter to my parents. Not an angry rant, but a simple statement of fact. "Dear Mom and Dad, for years I've tried to earn your respect. I supported our family in secret while downplaying my own achievements to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. The fact that I could build a $25 million company that supports American jobs, yet still be called uneducated trash in your home, has shown me that your perception of me will never change. I cannot be part of a dynamic where my worth is judged by a piece of paper instead of my character. I will always love you, but for my own well-being, I need space. I hope that one day we can find a way to rebuild on a foundation of mutual respect. Love, Chloe." I mailed the letter myself. No reply ever came. With the help of my executive assistant, I arranged to have my essential belongings shipped to Charleston. I told her to donate the rest, the furniture, the clothes, everything. I wanted a clean break, a fresh start, with no baggage, literal or metaphorical. My company was structured for remote work. The leadership team I had built was more than capable of handling daily operations. As I boarded the plane to Charleston, I felt a strange mix of profound sadness and exhilarating freedom. The family I had tried so hard to please was now in my past, but so was the crushing weight of their disapproval. Charleston, South Carolina, welcomed me with warm, humid air and the scent of salt water, a world away from the cold Colorado winter I'd left behind. My beach house was a modern 2-story home on a quiet stretch of coast, with huge floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the Atlantic. I'd bought it as an investment and had only visited twice for short getaways. When I arrived, it felt cold and impersonal, like a high-end rental property. The realtor had furnished it with generic, beige luxury decor, inoffensive but utterly soulless. The first thing I did was make it my own. That process became a form of therapy. I started in the master bedroom, swapping out the bland hotel-style bedding for beautiful handcrafted quilts made by one of my Origin Goods artisans from Tennessee. The mass-produced wall art came down, replaced by original paintings from up-and-coming American artists I discovered through my work. The kitchen was next. I had open shelving installed to display handmade pottery from our partners in Vermont and New Mexico. The industrial appliances stayed, but the space was warmed by colorful, hand-woven dish towels and custom wooden cutting boards. Creating new routines was crucial for my healing. I started every day with a long walk on the beach at sunrise, my bare feet in the cool, damp sand. I found a small, family-run coffee shop where the owners, a lovely couple who had moved from Cuba decades ago, quickly learned my name. Running the business from my new oceanfront office was surprisingly seamless. Video calls replaced boardroom meetings, and without the constant low-grade stress of my family situation, I found my focus was sharper, my decisions clearer. My leadership team flew in for a strategy retreat a month after I moved. We spent 3 days brainstorming on my deck, overlooking the ocean. "You seem different," said Marcus, my COO. More centered, more decisive. He was right. Freed from the subconscious need to seek my father's approval, my own business instincts felt stronger and more reliable. I started building a community. I joined the local Chamber of Commerce and a women's entrepreneurship group. Unlike in Denver, where I always felt the need to downplay my achievements, here I was open about my company's success. I was met not with jealousy or skepticism, but with genuine respect and curiosity. I became close friends with Eliza, who owned a local art gallery. She introduced me to her circle of friends, accomplished, intelligent women in their 30s and 40s who valued each other for who they were, not for their educational pedigrees. Our weekly dinners became a lifeline, filled with laughter and support. The most jarring moment came 3 weeks into my new life when my brother, Leo, showed up at my front door unannounced. "Wow, nice place," he said, whistling as he walked in and took in the view. He looked completely out of place in his pressed khakis and polo shirt. "What are you doing in Charleston, Leo?" I asked, making no move to offer him a seat. "Family," he said with that easy, practiced charm he always used. "And I wanted to run an investment opportunity by you. Might need a small loan to get in on the ground floor." The predictability of it was almost laughable. Without our parents there as an audience, the pretense was gone. This was a business trip. "I'm not making any more loans to family, Leo," I said, my voice firm. "That part of my life is over." His smile vanished. "So that's it? You move into your fancy beach mansion and forget where you came from?" "Dad was right about you. Dad called me uneducated trash and threw me out of his house," I reminded him coolly. "Is that the part you think I should remember?" He backtracked instantly. He didn't mean it. You know how he gets. Families fight. "That wasn't a fight, Leo. That was a moment of truth," I replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans." After I showed him the door, I sat on my deck, surprised by how little the encounter had shaken me. The boundaries I was setting were painful, but they felt right. That evening, I made a call to my lawyer. I instructed him to set up a foundation to establish an anonymous scholarship at the community college I had once attended. The Chloe Vance Entrepreneurial Grant would provide full tuition and a mentorship placement for 5 students each year who showed business promise but lacked the traditional academic background. Make sure the selection criteria is based on initiative and real-world problem solving, not just GPAs, I told him. And the mentors have to be people who have actually built things. As the weeks turned into a month, then 2, my house started to feel like a home. I planted a garden with native flowers that attracted hummingbirds. I adopted a goofy, mixed-breed rescue dog I named Charlie, who became my constant companion on my beach walks. The ache of my family's rejection was still there, but it was transforming from a gaping wound into an old scar. I was building a new life here, an authentic one, on my own terms. And then, an unexpected turn of events brought my family's story crashing back into mine. The Charleston Business Journal wasn't something I typically read, but my friend Eliza sent me a frantic text one morning. "You need to buy a copy. Page 3. Trust me." The feature article was a profile on local entrepreneurs making a national impact. And there I was in a full-page photo, standing on my deck with the ocean behind me. The headline read, "E-commerce pioneer relocates multi-million-dollar operation to Charleston." The journalist had been thorough, detailing Origin Goods' journey from a one-woman startup to a $25 million valuation, our work with American artisans, and even my recent scholarship foundation. It was a far more comprehensive and flattering portrait of my success than anything that had ever been written back home. "I didn't authorize this," I said to Eliza when she called. "Public records," she said. "Property deeds, business registrations. Once they knew you were here, it was easy for them to connect the dots. It's a great article, Chloe. You should be proud." I didn't think much of it until the following week when my social media account started blowing up. The article had been syndicated by several larger business websites and was being shared widely on LinkedIn and Facebook. Suddenly, old high school classmates were sending me friend requests. Former teachers were commenting that they always knew I had it in me. The most surprising messages came from small business owners in my old hometown, thanking me for showing what was possible outside the traditional career path. The local Denver newspaper eventually ran their own version of the story with the headline, "Local Dropout Makes National Headlines." The irony was thick enough to choke on. The same community that had reinforced my parents' narrow views was now claiming me as one of their own. It was through this wave of public attention that my family finally learned the true scale of my success. The first signal was a friend request from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. quickly followed by a dozen other extended family members. Then came the text from my mother. Saw the article about your company. Very impressive, dear. Your father and I are so proud. No mention of his vicious words, no acknowledgement of the chasm between us, just a casual, retroactive claim of pride that had been nowhere to be found when I was sitting at their dinner table. My father's voicemail came the next day. His tone was breezy and artificial. Chloe, just saw the big news about your company in the paper. Always knew you had it in you. Listen, I think we got our wires crossed the last time we talked. Give me a call. Got our wires crossed. That was his term for calling his daughter trash and ordering her out of his home. 3 days later, my mother texted again. We're thinking of a trip down to Florida next month. Would love to see your new place. Let us know what works. The message hit me like a physical blow. I had spent 6 weeks building this fragile new life, and now they wanted to just show up on my doorstep and pretend nothing had happened. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I booked another session with Dr. Evans. You hold the power here, she told me. You can say no. You can say yes, but with strict conditions. Or you can use this as an opportunity for a real conversation. But that requires them to be willing to do the work. After a lot of thought, I texted my mother back. You and Dad are welcome to visit, but we need to have an open and honest conversation about what happened at his birthday dinner before we can move forward. Please let me know if you're willing to do that. Her reply was almost instant. Of course, dear. We just want to put all this behind us and be a family again. Her wording, that desire to put it behind us, was troubling, but I agreed to a date for the following month. I spent the next few weeks preparing myself. I booked them a room at a nice hotel nearby, not in my house. I needed to protect my sanctuary. I role-played the difficult conversations with Dr. Evans, practicing how to state my feelings and set my boundaries without getting defensive. They arrived on a Tuesday. I met them for lunch at a beachfront restaurant, a public and neutral space. They seemed smaller, less imposing than I remembered them. My father's posture seemed less rigid, my mother more anxious. They were both dressed up, my father in a starched shirt and my mother in a dress that looked more appropriate for a church service than a seaside cafe. We made awkward small talk. Finally, after the food arrived, my father cleared his throat. So, about my birthday dinner, things got a little out of hand. You called me uneducated trash and a lowlife, I stated, my voice even. You told me to get out of your house. His face flushed. I was just surprised by all the news about your business. It caught me off guard. Maybe I said some things I shouldn't have. It was an excuse, not an apology. I need to understand, I pressed on, holding his gaze. Were you angry that I was successful, or angry that I'd been helping the family without you knowing? It felt like you were showing off, my mother chimed in, like you were trying to say you were better than us. I never thought that, I replied. I hid my success for years to avoid making anyone feel bad. And I helped because I love this family and I was in a position to do so. My father shifted in his seat. Well, the way you did it felt like charity. We never asked for it. The entire lunch went on like this, a carousel of justifications and minimization. The subtext was painfully clear. They weren't here because they had a change of heart about my worth. They were here because my public success had made it socially untenable for them to disown me. As we finished the meal, I made a choice. I'd like to show you my home, I said, but first I need to be crystal clear. I will not pretend that dinner never happened. I will not be called names. If we're going to have a relationship, it must be based on mutual respect. They looked at each other and my father gave a stiff nod. That sounds fair. When they walked into my house later that afternoon, their faces said it all. This was tangible. This was real. The $25 million valuation wasn't some funny money number anymore. It was manifested in oceanfront real estate and a home filled with beautiful, handcrafted art. This is really something, my father mumbled. his voice strained. As I gave them the tour, pointing out the different pieces made by Origin Goods artisans, I had a profound realization. Their approval, the thing I had chased for so long, had lost its power. I was proud of this house and of the company that paid for it, and it didn't matter what they thought. That feeling, right there, was worth more than any apology they could ever offer. The conversation that evening on my deck, as the sun melted into the ocean, was the hardest of my life. "I want to be clear," my father started, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I am sorry for what I said. It was out of line. The apology was there, but it was buried under the weight of his own surprise and bruised ego." "What hurt," I said, choosing my words with care, "was the feeling that those words revealed how you really see me, no matter what I accomplish." My mother reached out, her hand hovering over mine. "We've always been proud of you, Chloe. We worried. Without the degree, we worried." "My future is here," I said, gesturing to the house, the ocean, the life I had built. I built it without a degree, but with 7 years of nonstop work. That should earn respect, not insults. The conversation went on for hours. There was no single moment of dramatic breakthrough, no tearful group hug. It was more like the start of a long, slow negotiation. We established a fragile truce. As they were getting ready to leave, I laid out my terms. "I am willing to rebuild, but on new ground," I explained. "The name-calling, the condescension about my education, that has to stop. Completely." They agreed, though I could see the reluctance in my father's tight jaw. After they left, I realized the healing was just beginning. I kept in touch with my parents through brief, weekly calls that slowly became less stilted. My relationship with my siblings took different paths. Megan called me a few weeks later and gave me a real, tearful apology for her part in everything. We started to build a new relationship, one between two adults, not the one from our childhood. Leo remained distant. My therapy continued. Dr. Evans helped me see how my entire life had been shaped by a search for validation. "Success can't be a substitute for self-worth," she told me, "and you can't buy a family's approval." This new understanding changed everything. I became more comfortable in my own skin, talking about my achievements without shame or arrogance. The entrepreneurship grant became my passion project. I started a mentorship program connecting people like me with students who had the drive, but not the traditional credentials. The joy I got from seeing them succeed was more fulfilling than any praise from my father. My circle of friends in Charleston became my chosen family. They taught me what real support felt like. The beach house was no longer just a house. It was my home, filled with life and love. I even adopted a second rescue dog, a sweet old retriever named Luna. At Origin Goods, I rolled out a new company-wide policy allowing for flexible remote work, and productivity soared. A year after I moved, I threw a dinner party for my new friends. As we sat on the deck watching the dolphins in the surf, I looked at their smiling faces and realized how much my life had changed. "To chosen family," Eliza said, raising her glass, "and to having the courage to choose respect over obligation." She had captured the single greatest lesson of my journey. Family is important, but not at the expense of your own dignity. And sometimes the most painful rejections are the ones that set you on the path to your most authentic life. Have you ever had to choose between your family's expectations and your own dreams? Have you been criticized for taking an unconventional path? Share your story in the comments. And please like and subscribe if this story spoke to you, and share it with anyone who might need to hear that they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and always remember, sometimes the family we build is more important than the one we were born into.